European law and into commercial law specifically. Today, I'm here on behalf of ILSA, where I act as the editor-in-chief of the ILSA journal. And together with the EU department, we have organized this event, which is entirely dedicated to EU law. So the agenda is quite simple. I will pass the floor later on to the EU department team so they can introduce themselves to you, and they will also introduce our guests. Afterwards, we will be conducting the interview with the guests. We have prepared some questions. And lastly, we have allocated a 20-minute time for Q&A, which, by the way, feel free to drop questions in the chat or simply raise your hand via the option here on Teams so that we can entertain all your questions. I would also like to announce that the ILSA Journal issue 1 for 2021 is in the process of finalization. This year we will be having an E&E panel for that, in which we will present all the publications, and you will have the chance to see the authors there who will be answering the questions. And I have to say that this event is still not specifically planned yet, but we have it as a future plan. So the details will be announced later. So I kindly ask you to keep an eye on that. Right now, without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Dr. Stefania Marassi, who is a senior lecturer and researcher in The Hague University. Dr. Marassi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. So thanks for giving me the floor. It's just a very brief introduction about who I am. So as you said, I'm a senior lecturer at the law program, and I'm coordinating I'm the year 3 chair of the EU law department. And with Adam, who is now our students' assistant, we thought about starting a series of seminars or sessions to, let's say, increase the visibility of EU law, and trying in a way to address some of the questions the students had in an info session, like what exactly can you do with EU law? And that's why I thought about inviting Plamena and Bram, who I met a few years ago. I supervised Plamena's while she was writing thesis, and Bram his internship, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. And yeah, it's with great pleasure to have you here. Plamena, if I can make some publicity, will be the contact person of the office of the member of the European Parliament, who will provide one of the research assignments for this applied research project, because I see here some names that I saw an hour ago in the year 4 information session. So yeah, she will be one of those projects, contact person in the organization providing the projects, and dealing also with EU law related topics. And next year we will have 4 modules in year 3, dealing with EU law related topic, one on EU law and EU public law and governance, food safety and public health, EU business regulation, and the last one on environmental law, climate change and energy law. So if you have questions, feel free also to ask. I'll give the floor now to Adam.
Yes, thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. My name is Adam, and I will be the second moderator of this event. I'm a second-year international law student, also a student assistant for the EU department, and I plan to specialize in the EU law next year. Therefore, I'm really happy that we are able to bring you this event, and we hope that the discussion we will have with our guest will show you what it is like to specialize in EU law, what it's like to study it on master's level, and most importantly, to show you what kind of possibilities and career paths you may pursue in the future. I'm happy that today we are able to bring you 2 young successful professionals who are alumni of our university and EU law specialization. Ms. Plamena Markova, who has obtained master's degree at King's College in London, has done internship at Eurojust, and is now currently working for the European Parliament as an accredited assistant. So hello, Plamena. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for the invitation and for organizing this. It's really nice to be here again at the Hague University, kind of, even if online. And yes, as Adam introduced me and Miss Marassi as well, my name is Plamena, and I have studied in the Hague University starting 2014. I graduated in 2018. I did an Erasmus exchange in Rome, and after graduating from the Hague, I went to King's College, as Adam said. I have done a couple of internships throughout this time, and after King's, I went to the Parliament for a traineeship, and then I've been offered a job. And I've been working since end of 2019 in the Parliament for a Bulgarian member of the European Parliament. That's about me.
Yes, great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. And our second guest is Mr. Bram Schrouder, who is currently completing his master's degree in European Economic and Competition Law, and has also done an internship with Europa de Central, where he worked with local authorities and helped them to apply European law. So good evening, Bram.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction, and good to be here. Just as Plamena said, it's fun to be back in the context of the Hague University, even if virtually, but great deal of fun and good idea to have this event.
Yes, thank you. So to start, Plamena, could you maybe tell us what motivated you to study international law, and how were your studies at the Hague University?
I think the studies were really, really great. And actually, I chose the Hague University specifically because it gives you a more practice-related education. What motivated me to study law, it's a very long and big question, but if I can summarize, I was really interested in European and international law, mostly European, but I decided to follow the program because I've been wanting to study law abroad in English and not national law, and I thought that the composition of the program is really good. And I really liked the practical side. We were able to do internships, and all the assignments that we had to do were really with the practical direction, and also not to leave aside all the help that we got from the teachers, because all the lecturers were really willing to show us. And another important point is that all the lecturers were really experienced professionals who either hold PhDs or they are lawyers, or we've been having some visiting lecturers from, let's say, ICTY or different tribunals and organizations. And yes, this really won me. So I think those are maybe my highlights of the 4 years.
Yes, and then in year 3, you decided to specialize in EU law. Was it
Yes.
Was it always something that interested you, that you knew from year 1 that you would like to specialize in European law, or it was something during the studies that made you make this decision?
Well, if I have to be completely honest with you, I think the first few courses taking EU law, and especially receiving the exam results and having the Brussels trip, really opened my eyes for the institutions. And even if I liked it before, when we went to the Parliament, and it was luck that we had a lecture by a Bulgarian trainee there. So it was just all meant to be, because now I'm kind of at her position. And I really liked it. It was easier than, let's say, international criminal law. I'm sorry for the people who are taking it. I mean, it was very hard for me. And the EU law subjects were just very easy to follow, very interesting. So that's why I decided to take the specialization, even though I went to Rome. But in Rome, I only studied EU law courses. So yes, this is what I did in year 3.
Yes, and I don't know if you remember, but do you remember any favorite subjects you had in the EU specialization that you enjoyed the most?
Year 3 was, I think, the best, because Miss Morassi actually was the lecturer in a couple of subjects I took, and I think employment law was my favorite, because I wrote my LLB thesis on employment law on the Posted Workers Directive, the recast. And yeah, I think this is what made me the biggest impression. I mean, I think that it's very nice how the subjects get more narrow in the specialization, because, for example, European public law, private law, and let's say competition law, everything that we took in year 2, I'm not sure if now it's the same way that the subjects are divided, but yes, everything that we took was more broad, and then in year 3 we had a better chance to dive in all the cases, and we had smaller groups. We would talk about the decisions, and I think this is what made a very good impact on the education.
Right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so all right, so then I would go on with Bram. So basically, it would be the same question. What motivated you to study international and European law specifically? Because I see that in the first 2 years we are presented with so many courses ranging from all possibilities, and it's very interesting, but at times it can be very confusing because you find yourself liking criminal law, but at the same time you're attracted by corporate law. So how did you come specifically to EU law?
Well, when I graduated high school, I started by going to a local university to where I was from, studying Dutch law, and it took me about 2 months to realize that I hated it. And when I engaged in a discussion with my professors there, because I always wanted to study law, essentially because I wanted to go into private practice and do corporate law, they asked me, and what is it that you hate? And together we kind of came to the conclusion that I like law, but just not the way that they taught it there. So I started looking at different programs, and I just kind of accidentally stumbled across the international law program, and I kind of took a gambit on it because it sounded very interesting, and the idea of studying it in English sounded exhilarating to me. So I figured, okay, let's give that a shot. And kind of as things progressed, I liked it a lot. I realized quickly that I think one of the best features of the program in general is the faculty's ability to retain talent from the practical, with practical experience, essentially, while also being academically engaged. And at the same time, this was only later, I realized that a lot of the professors and teachers at the law program kind of incorporate their own views on what's important in their materials. It depends per course, obviously, and that's something that I really like, because that kind of helped me to get enthusiastic about all the subjects that we had. So in the first year, I think I remember the first course being just EU law in general, and a little bit of history and institutions about the European Union. I remember a lot of my colleagues at the time not liking it at all, and I was kind of surprised that I actually enjoyed it profoundly. And that was the same period that we also had corporate law, at which I did very poorly. So it kind of shuffled all my priorities and my ambitions in my head. What do I like and what do I want to do? And I came to the conclusion that I still want to go to private practice and go to corporate law, but that my academic interests lie elsewhere. So over the next year, we had additional EU law courses, I think internal market, public law, and competition law 1, if I'm not mistaken. And I started to realize that if there's anything that I could get academically interested in, it was EU law. So come the end of year 2, when you're supposed to, at least we were supposed to give preference for specializations, which, as I understand, are now modules. It was really kind of clear cut for me. I liked EU law from an academic perspective. I liked the way that it works, that it functions, and especially its interplay with member states' legal systems. But at the same time, I realized I still wanted to end up with essentially within private practice. So I just kind of took the gamble, if you will, that I could specialize in something radically different during my bachelor's, and perhaps also do a master's in it, while still going where I essentially wanted to go, which was undoubtedly one of the best academic decisions I've made for myself, because it allowed me the chance to study something that I find very important and that I want to stay academically engaged with, even if working and in private practice. And the reason I like EU law specifically is I mean, yes, it's interplay, but I think to me, it just makes sense for some reason. A lot of courses don't make sense, but this just was something to me that just felt very natural and clear, and that just, yeah, resonated with me.
See, so just so the viewers can also be clarified. So by private practice, what do you specifically mean? Are you working in a law firm?
Well, private practice, I mean, the thing is, I wanted to go to private practice, but then there's still the choice of what do you want to do. A lot of firms, especially in Brussels and in Amsterdam, have well-developed competition law practices. But I started studying law, wanted to go into corporate law, which I still like. I like the practical experiences I've had with it. So when I started applying, I focused mostly on corporate law courses, and now having virtually completed my master's degree, I'm going to move to Luxembourg somewhere in August to start working there as a corporate lawyer.
That's good. It's great to hear, and I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank
But
you.
right now, it would be good to go. So, as you already understood, these are general questions. Now we would like to go into more specific questions. So maybe Adam can start with Pamela.
Yes, of course. So one of the questions students also have is what to do after the bachelor's degree at our university, and what they can study at a master level. What can they do after the bachelor's? Just also the subject, what they can focus on, but also where. So, Plamena, you went to the King's College in London after bachelor's at The Hague. So, did you have any particular reason why did you choose this university?
Yes, well, I had very special reasons to go there. I wanted to go to London maybe since the second year, because I've been doing some research on good universities for masters of law that I can do, and I was looking at the ones that have good EU law courses and EU law professionals. And even if there was Brexit coming around the corner, and it kind of made a lot of people a bit discouraged, I really made research about the teachers that are, let's say, at King's, at UCL, at LSE, and Queen Mary, because I was accepted to all of those. And then I chose King's specifically because they had the Center of European Law there, and I had a chance to meet one of the former directors of this center, and also they had one of the founders of the center was an advocate general, Sir Francis Jacobs. He's very famous, so I've kind of researched my way to go there. But you know, this is my particular situation. I think for the students in general, it really depends what type of law they want to deal with, and if they want to practice in their home country, if they want to return, or if they want to go to an institution, let's say maybe to Brussels or Luxembourg, or if they want to go to private practice, as Bram was describing. So I think it really matters to think about what you want to do and where, and then you can kind of narrow your choices. And I mean, King's is a very good university. It could be a bit expensive, but you can have a scholarship. Personally, I was aiming for a university that kind of opens doors, but because I knew that I want to go to an institution afterwards, so I knew that it's going to be quite tricky and I need to plan it well. And yes, I just did a lot of research. I remember that I was preparing my applications for more than 6 months, 8 months, something like this. I really researched everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a long time, but definitely research is one of the most important things when applying to a university for masters. And what other parts did you need to do as your application process when you applied for these universities in London? Because I think you definitely need to write some motivational letter. Mm-hmm. Did they have also some entry exams, or did they look at your grades you received in The Hague?
Yes, they looked at the grades. They didn't have an entry exam. I know that, for example, in the Netherlands, they would have interviews. For example, my friend went to Utrecht and she had an interview there. But no, I only had to have good grades. I think above, was it above 8.5 or 8, something like, I think something like this. And of course, they look at your extracurricular activities and at your personal statement that you have to write. And as every person, I watched a lot of YouTube videos on people who applied and got accepted, and they were giving very specific advice on your personal statement. You really need to show why you want to be there and what can you give, not only what you can take from them as an education, but what you can contribute as, let's say, me as a Bulgarian student studying European law, also did an exchange, also did a couple of summer schools throughout the years, went to European University Institute in the summer before King's, did 3 internships. So, I try to really navigate all the things that I have done and put them in this one page. And this is maybe the best advice that I could give. You should try to really put everything that is your interest and forms you as a person, because everyone is different. And I believe all the different features that we have make us more special candidates. So, but actually they didn't have other entry requirements. They didn't really have English, of course, English exam. Unfortunately, I had to take a TOEFL because I had the Cambridge diploma, but it was a couple of years ago, so it was old. So I had to take TOEFL, and in the end I was accepted, and I was waiting for the TOEFL result, and I was like, wow, imagine if this TOEFL result really ruins everything. But of course it wasn't a problem because you are studying in English, you're writing a thesis in English, so yeah, it's very easy.
And was that not enough that you studied bachelor's in English?
I mean, no, they wanted the TOEFL. They wanted it was not enough. No, unfortunately.
That's good to know. And are there any particular qualities they are looking for in the personal statement, or is it, like you said, it's important to make yourself seem interesting and really committed for the university?
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm not on their selection board to say with certainty, but I think it matters to be honest and not to start the letter with all these phrases that everyone is writing. Like, I've been interested in this since I was 5. Because, I mean, come on, be objective. You weren't interested in this since you were 5. I mean, not in like a very specific legal subject. You could be interested in, I don't know, in other things that formed your opinion. But yeah, jokes aside, I was trying to be honest and trying to write why I want to be there, to help my member state. And I think what I did in my CV and what I wrote in the letter were really, they were really the things that I have done. I explained in the letter. I explained why, and I think that's very important to show motivation. I think this is the most important.
Yes. Do you think also the internship that our university provide us with at least 6, I think it's 6 months or 3 months of internship we need to do in 4 years in some way help your application?
Yes, I think definitely. I think it helps because, I mean, even if you go to a research university to have an academic degree, a master's degree, it really helps to show that you can produce different assignments, different products. And I mean, when I went there, all the students, all my colleagues, they actually were already lawyers. Majority of them, there were very little people who just went after their bachelor. So I think that the little experience I had from The Hague, from internships, really helped me to at least feel not so, not ashamed, but I mean, if you sit with a person who is a judge in Korea and you are like 23 years old and you're just studying, you really need to kind of show yourself what you have done and talk to those people and tell them about your experience. So definitely the internships help. They're really, really good feature of the Hague University program, for sure.
Yes, I completely agree. I think it's also one of the reasons the students choose the Hague University, that it's really practical and it offers also this possibility to take internships. and it's also really useful for the future. If you can maybe say or compare studying at the Hague University and King's College, what was different, and maybe yes, what was more difficult, maybe easier, and what the Hague University prepared you for the best?
I would say it's difficult to compare a 4-year degree to a 1-year master's degree. Firstly, let's start with that. And I mean, I don't think they were much different because majority of the things that we touched upon at King's I already knew from The Hague. The difference was that at King's I was really kind of by myself, and I had to find the dissertation topic by myself. I had to navigate my research by myself. Let's see if I want to submit some articles to my professors, if I want to try to publish something, because I also did that. And you only have 1 year, exactly 12 months. So you have to finish this. You went to this very special school. You have to have very good grades, or at least kind of a decent grades. You're not going there paying this money to just, graduate. So I really was trying to buckle up and do this. And in The Hague, you had more time. You had more time to think. You had more time to navigate your interests. You had more time to dive into different law subjects. And I think that's why The Hague was a very good choice for a bachelor's degree. And then King's was a good choice for a master's degree. And I think The Hague University does a really good preparation. So with all the projects that we had to do, all the assignments that we had to write, I think that this really prepares you for, let's say, a difficult 1 or 2-year master's degree afterwards.
Now I would like to talk a bit about Brexit, as it's, I think, something that students are really interested in, because also myself, I was thinking about going for masters to the UK, but now I'm reconsidering because of the Brexit, because it can change some parts of the application. It also brings some obstacles. When you applied, it was already after the Brexit?
No. I applied before Brexit, and this was, before, after the decision, but before the formal carrying out of leaving the EU. So I applied actually in the last year, in which you could have the fees as European nationals that would be the same to the British students, and this was a big motivation. And if I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure that I would have made the same choice now if I had difficulties in, let's say, paying the fee or having a scholarship. So I would say that now it is for sure more complicated, but I think that, I don't want to speak on top of my head, because I did not research the fees and the entry requirements right now, but I from what I have heard from friends and from colleagues, it is definitely more complex now. And what I have done is I just was lucky to do it before. Yes. But it shouldn't be, to finish, it shouldn't be something that stops students to try, for sure.
Yes, but I believe the Brexit will create some obstacles, and definitely the fee status will be the deciding factor for some students to whether to choose to go to the UK or not. And do you think it can be seen as a disadvantage in European institutions to have a master's degree in the UK now that after the Brexit, UK is not a part of the European Union anymore? Do you think it's a disadvantage for a student to have master's degree from UK?
Well, my personal opinion is that it would not be a disadvantage, but there are very different people around the institutions and around the parliament. People think that, many people are very critical of UK's decision to leave and all the complications that it will create on the internal market and the different member states, different procedures, also the EU budget. So I think that if we take it from this point of view, there might be some critical opinions for sure, but I don't think that we really see it this way, because the universities there are old universities with a very big history and they're very famous for their academic achievements. So I don't think that we should focus on this and base it as an opinion for where to continue your academic path. And I think that a lot of people from King's, let's say, I'm giving an example, were people who worked at the commission or were visiting lectures from the commission. And I think that those people, or also from law firms in Brussels, for competition law specifically. So I think that those people know what a valuable education could be, and also students should not be discriminated with this.
Yes, for sure. I completely agree with that. Maybe my last question to be take it from this side, also from the side of the UK. Do you think it might happen that UK universities will offer less European law courses because they are not part of the European Union anymore? So it might be not that not that big of advantage to offer a European law course for them anymore.
I don't think so. I don't think so, to be honest, because these universities are really, a lot of them are quite old. If you take new universities or universities that are not so specialized in EU law courses, of course it might make sense for them to do that. But for the universities that offer good EU law navigated courses, I don't think so. I don't think that the Center for European Law will close at King's, let's put it in these words. So no, my opinion is at least not in the next couple of years, for sure not for the students that are now joining this event.
Okay, good. That is definitely good to hear for students that are thinking about going to UK for their master's degree.
I think everyone should really research very well their options, because I've been there 2 years ago. So I'm basing this opinion on things that I have heard, that have been going around my colleagues, people I know, but I think that you should have first-hand experience to really be 100% convinced in this. Just to make a disclaimer.
Okay, thank you. But it's definitely interesting to hear an opinion from someone who has actually studied in the UK. So thank you very much. Now we'll leave floor to Dave and Bram and give them some space to talk also.
Yes, thank you, Adam. My first question for Bram is, I was looking at your LinkedIn, and I saw that you're enrolled in a master's for European Economic and Competition Law at Stockholm University. So my first question is, why Stockholm?
It's a very good question. I didn't really specifically choose Stockholm. I do have some kind of affinity for Scandinavian countries in general, but I was looking at master's degrees basically at the hands of a couple of objective metrics, and essentially they yielded this particular program in Stockholm. And for anybody considering it, Stockholm is an amazing city. I'm disappointed that I couldn't be there for much longer because of the pandemic, but it's definitely a very international city, and all in all, I would definitely suggest going there. If not for a master's, go there on a vacation, because it's a great place. And also, I think one of the two kind of counter Plamena's considerations about the masters in London, there's no tuition fee at all if you are a European citizen. Thanks to the European Union, every European citizen obviously is awarded the same benefits. So, that was, to me, that was a major plus, because it just saves you money or the onus of researching loans or grants or you name it. But all in all, I chose the program over the city, and the city happened to be great, and that was a good plus.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask about your student life here in The Hague, and I wanted to compare, but I see that unfortunately the pandemic hit right in the moment where you were doing the masters. So let's focus on the degree itself. So competition law. What motivated you to focus into competition law specifically?
I think at the end of year 2 we had a competition law course at the Hague University, and I really liked it. We had I can't remember his name, but we had a visiting professor at the time who was just extremely passionate about the subject and really conveyed his enthusiasm properly, and that really got me, interested in the field. I ended up picking an EU law specialization, and in there I had Mr. Anton Dinev for competition law 2, who was also very passionate about the field and who really kind of showed us his personal views on some of the contentious issues in the field. And I liked it to the extent that I figured I want to do something with this. When I was researching internships, I came across the one at Europa Decentraal, which also does a lot with state aid, which kind of reinforced my feeling, I like this. So I started looking at master's degrees in essentially competition law. And you have some in the Netherlands, one law and economics at Utrecht University. But for me, the link with competition law in general seemed very nebulous. And what I liked about it was the regulatory aspect of it. And when you study law and economics, you review the regulatory aspect, but mostly from an economic point of view, which is interesting in itself. But I like the really nitty-gritty way of how it works and how it interrelates with other areas. So I wanted to study competition law. There's not a lot of masters that really delve into competition law very, very deeply and extensively. The one I did is essentially, it's titled European Economic Law, and you have the choice to take a competition law route, a banking finance route, and a social dimension kind of route. And I immediately knew that I wanted to take competition law. Of the degrees that I found, I think the one in Stockholm spoke to me the most because of the faculty there. 2 ex-commission DG Comp employees, someone who served as an assistant to a court judge, and just a whole bunch of doctorates in the field of competition law. So to me, it's a perfect mixture of practice and really academia, and also kind of the transcription of the EU legal method, kind of how the European legal system in general works. And to add to that, we also have a doctoral candidate in law and economics who also visited frequently and kind of gave his economic perspective on the things that came up. And what appealed to me most were the guest lectures from really all varieties of people. We had court judges come in, a lot of law firms and commission executives, and you name it. All in all, it was just a really amazing experience. I think the best thing about it was how they expect you to really do the studying and the understanding of the basics yourself before you come in there. And then when the judges come in to explain what they do, and when the lawyers come in to explain how their practice works, you can really engage with them and discuss with them in detail what actually happens with competition law in general and economic law in general.
Yeah, I really agree to that. I believe being in contact with the practitioners, it really gives you a gist of the reality and how things work. But I actually wanted to ask about the economical aspect, because to be honest, as far as I'm aware, or as far as I've seen, or people or lawyers, when you present a number, they kind of get scared or intimidated. Was that the case for you? And if yes, how did you tackle with getting into the economic aspect of law?
Well, I think what gave me a great basis was the course in law and economics, which I had from Aurélien Lorange in year 4. It was a very challenging course for me, but it also really dove into some economic concepts that you may remember from high school economics somewhere, but it really explains them to a point where it makes sense when you look at it from a legal perspective, or when you look at the law from an economic perspective. And I think a lot of legal fields are inherently economical. I mean, talking about torts or contracts or sports law or Pretty much anything but administrative law and public law it's inherently economic, and you realize that as you see specific regulations in competition law, or when you look at the way that tort law is in general framed. I think once you realize that it is all rooted in economic modeling and econometric regressions in a way, it just starts making a whole lot more sense. And that's true, especially for financial law and competition law, which are the two main economic specializations at the master's that I did.
I see. My next question would be, so I'm not quite sure what did you exactly do after finishing the bachelor? So you did an internship, or did you work and then start the master's? Like, because I've had many discussions with people and that say, oh, it's better to finish the bachelor, maybe work for a little bit and then bring yourself together and start a master. But some people are like, no, I want to do bachelor's and master's and then I want to go straight into work. What's your take on that?
I think I fall somewhere in between. I think both come with advantages and disadvantages. As Plamena said, during my master's, it was the same. I was surrounded by lawyers, a lot of German lawyers actually, and maybe there are some people from Germany here, but they'll know that the German state exams are extremely hard, and if you're able to pass them, you're essentially a legal god. But so I felt somewhat intimidated by my surroundings, because I was surrounded by lawyers from all over Europe, and that all knew a lot about law in general. But I did find that because of the way that the law program at the Hague University is structured, I could measure up fairly well, because there is the academic aspect of it. You know, you have to write your thesis and you have to write assignments and do your own research. While at the same time, the assignments you write, they do reflect common practical scenarios, and there's a reason that you draft memorandums and advice letters. So in that way, I felt like I could measure up quite reasonably, actually, as compared to experienced and battle-hardened lawyers. So thinking about your question, I'm not sure what the preferred route would be, because I can understand that when you're studying, you want to bring it to an end and start working and start your career. I mean, that's a very sensible conclusion. At the same time, I do believe that practical experience helps you to succeed and really excel in a master's, because you learn a lot of qualities during practical experience that you could hypothetically learn at a university, but that you don't learn at a university. One of the examples thereof is during my internship that I did, a 2-month internship that I did after the program over the summer, was writing, really. I think there's a skills course about writing, and I think I, along with a lot of other people, take skills courses with some hesitation about their relevance and how is this going to help me succeed as a future lawyer. Looking back, though, I wish I'd been a lot more engaged with them, because some of the things that I remember Jeff Dahl explaining to us and me thinking, oh, come on, I know this, like, there's no sense in spending hours on this. They came up during my first internship at Europa Decentral about just general writing techniques and how to write in a way that's compelling and appealing to whoever's reading it. But yeah, on the other hand, I understand that you want to bring your academic career to an end, but because I was able to kind of fall in between, I didn't have to spend a year working, but I was able to squeeze something relevant in between. I think it's really helped me, especially now that I've written my master's thesis, in doing better than I would have had I not had that practical experience. So in general, my advice would be try and find a balance as soon as possible, even if you're doing your bachelor's. I mean, there's always ways to get practical experience next to your studies. It doesn't matter. Maybe you've got friends that you can help with some legal advice that you can write letters for. Maybe you have, I don't know, friends back home that have tenancy disputes that you can help with. I mean, with some creativity, I think any practical experience will learn you something.
You see. That's a very interesting insight. And you mentioned the German lawyers and like all those qualified lawyers that can actually intimidate you at first. So the idea is what does the future look for you? So in the discussion in the beginning you mentioned something about working in the private sector. That's your focus right now. But we're talking about competition law, and recently I've been writing a paper for ILSA journal about competition law. Personally, I focused on cartels and the damage that they bring. And then I started focusing on the fines that the commission puts on these companies who participate in cartel. And I saw that these fines can go up to 1 billion euros. And let's say you will be the lawyer who will be dealing with that. Have you thought about that specifically, like the pressure and everything else? And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when I got invited for an interview, my first thought was, how am I ever going to make it through this interview? Then I got a second, and then of course you think, how am I going to make it through this interview? And then at some point you get hired, and my first thought was, why did they hire me? You know, how did I lie? Or you start thinking, why am I in this position right now? I think no matter what you do, you will always be in a position where you start doubting, you know, the gravity of the work that you do, and you realize that it's going to be challenging. On the other hand, I sincerely believe that the way that the program is structured at the Hague University, it just really aptly prepares you for a lot of different situations. I mean, it's impossible to get a full circle bachelor's or master's program that really just gives you everything. But as far as the balance between practicalities and actual academia, I'm just incredibly happy that I ended up where I did, even if it was something of a kind of a coincidence, really. So I have considered it, but at the same time, I think the more you think about it, the more you can stress yourself out, really, by thinking about these doubts that you may have. I think the most important part is to just do it and to understand that if you were able to complete a bachelor's and potentially a master's, that you will also be able to measure up against people that have been doing something for a very long time, because that's essentially what you're studying for. And further to that, I think the most important thing is to realize that you also learn by doing. You can study any set of laws as much as you like, but you really start getting the hang of it once you start doing it. And usually that happens very quickly, at least in my experience.
See. Thank you for the answers. Now I'm looking at the time, and it's better that okay, Adam, you have the floor. 7.5 minutes, perhaps, for the other questions. I will have it again for 7.5 minutes, and then we will jump into Q&A. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, perfect, Dave. Thank you. So, Plemen, I already mentioned that currently now you're working for the European Parliament as an accredited assistant, which is probably maybe even the most famous political institutions in the Europe, or one of them, I would say. My first question would be what is the entry process like to get employed by the European Parliament, and how difficult it is to get employed there?
I think there is a kind of a complicated entry process maybe on every job at a new institution, and we have to make it clear that the way I entered is different than the way some other colleagues entered, and the way different people entered. I have applied for different traineeships, and I myself was not planning on entering so fast, let's say. I thought that I would start with a traineeship, and then I would perhaps do the EPSU tests or the CAST, and then navigate my choices. But then I've been offered to stay as an assistant. So actually I was quite lucky in my personal situation, because I did not have to go through a formal selection procedure, because I've already went through a couple of rounds of interviews when I was applying for the traineeships. But in general, I mean, I think that it's really doing a traineeship in an EU institution. I think it's important because of course, you have to be lucky. It depends on the specific, let's say, secretariat or committee that you're at in the parliament, or let's say DG at the commission. I had friends of mine who went to DG Comp and were really happy with what they have received as attitude from their supervisors, and they received help and navigation. One even did some internal exams, but unfortunately she did not pass. But anyway, it's a big step. And for some other people that were at different places, other friends of mine that were at different secretariats of the parliament, they did not have this help, and they were, after the traineeship, they could not stay. So it's really different from my personal experience. I applied for the Schumann traineeships, and also I applied for separate members of the European Parliament that I'm interested in their work. And then in the offices that I applied for, they have interviewed me. I had the practical tasks to complete, and then I had a second interview with some of the assistants on the phone, and only then I received a result. And first, as a MEP trainee, you start with 1 or 2 months probation, then it gets extended to 6 months. It depends. It depends on the contract that you're going to get in the beginning. And in my case, my boss has offered me a contract as an assistant to become his advisor. But this is very personal, of course. I would say that if the students want to go to the institutions, I would say that it's nice to start with the traineeship, the blue book at the commission or the council, or it's like you could get in the parliament with the Schumann. You could, if you really like politics and you're really into the work of some different members of the parliament that you follow, you could also write to them. You could ask them if they are offering a place for a traineeship in their office, and then you can really make contacts within the institution, and you could meet, let's say, if you go for a MEP trainee, you can meet other MEPs from the same political party or the same delegation, and they could tell you, okay, I need an assistant, I have this free spot, or okay, you should go and do the specific cast and try to this DG. I know that they are looking for a specialist in, let's say, different health law or different law. So yeah, I think it's starting from somewhere and making your way through and trying to get connections is important.
Okay, it's good to know that there are different possibilities and different ways to get employed, and yes, that the students have options. What are some most valuable qualities that the European Parliament is looking for in their applicants when they're looking for employees? What kind of skills should we have?
Well, languages are one of the most important qualities. You have to speak at least 2 languages, that there are 2 EU languages. One of them should be English. It is an asset if you speak French. If you go for the Court of Justice, you need to be fluent in French. And so, yes, 2 or 3 languages is definitely a key asset. Then I would say it's important to have a lot of extracurricular or internship experience, because they tend to get, I mean, I'm saying from what I have seen and from all the trainees that I have met when I was a trainee, but they do get people who have finished their master's degree, or they have finished the bachelor's degree, but they did another traineeship. They don't just get the person who has little experience if they want them to stay for longer. Of course, I know people who did a 2-month traineeship with an MEP, but then it was obviously clear that this is just a 2-month traineeship, and then you need to continue a master's degree or another internship somewhere else, and then you can return. So I think that experiences which prove your interest in the field are important, and you have to be ready to work long hours, and to show that you're not there to bring a coffee or make a couple of copies. You have to really show that you're there to network, you are there to make a difference, and you can really be ambitious and achieve your goals. You should not be you should not be what I'm trying to say is that you should try to promote yourself and push yourself forward. It's difficult, but this is how it works.
Yes, definitely. And speaking of working long hours, I also wanted to ask you what are your main competences and duties as a accredited assistant? And maybe the best way to illustrate this would be if you could maybe describe your normal working day as a European Parliament assistant.
Okay, I will imagine that I'm actually going to go to the building and not stay in my living room. But, assistants do a number of tasks. Basically, we kind of prepare everything for our member, and it depends, of course, on the committees that he's participating in. So in our team, I'm saying in our team because it's different for every member, but in our team, every assistant is responsible for a committee. So when I started my traineeship, I was immediately shown the work of the budgetary control committee, and I was helping one of the other assistants there. And after I have become a permanent member of the team, this is now my main responsibility. Of course, it is not only preparing briefs for committee work or focusing on a legislative file. We have to do a lot of administrative work as well. So, of course, all of us do administrative work for our boss. Okay, but I am not describing my day, so maybe I should start with maybe I should start over. I do administrative work often, but I also do kind of legal work. It's of course not as working in a company or in a legal office, but we do have to monitor the files that my member is responsible for, and we do have to provide with feedback. So a normal day would start with checking my email, checking the email box of my member, seeing whether he has committees to participate in for the day, preparing his speeches for the committees where he's participating in. Then he would be, let's say, a rapporteur on a legislative file. He was a rapporteur for co-rapporteur for REACT-EU. I don't know if you have heard of this Corona crisis response instrument. And then he would have meetings with the other co-rapporteurs. We would prepare him with my colleagues for the meeting. We would advise him on his points of view. Then he would need to travel back. So I would have to prepare his travel as well. And I'm saying this and being objectively honest with you, because if you want to be an assistant, you have to be prepared that you do have to do some administrative work with these preparations. Other things that we do, let's say in that day when I checked both of our email boxes, I saw that a certain citizen or organization have complained about the law or some specific issue that they have, and they're asking for help, and it's within the competencies of my boss, because let's say it's within the topics of my committee, of the Committee of Budgetary Control. So I would contact this person or this company. I would try to help them with their issue. And to finish off, very important, if it is a plenary week where the Parliament votes legislation, what I would mainly do during my day is prepare the voting indications of my boss for the files that my committee would be responsible for, and I would have to advise him as well. So, of course, this includes long hours. If my boss has an interview next morning and he has to be on national TV, we would have to stay late and prepare his speaking points for this interview as well. So I think I'm sorry if I extended my speaking time a bit, but I wanted to mention very important aspects, and I think this kind of describes how a day of an assistant goes.
Perfect, thank you very much. Actually, I think we have a bit more time, so if I may, I think I have one or more two questions that I wanted to ask you. Maybe something more specific. So Does your work mostly entail working for one MEP, or you work for the whole, let's say, Bulgarian team of or Bulgarian members of the parliament?
No, my work only entails with the work of one member. I'm specifically employed by him and I am only his advisor. And yes, they are assistants that work for more members, let's say for the whole political group of, let's say, Bulgarian members for the SND party. But this is not my case. I'm working only for one person.
Okay, and one more thing I was also interested in, because you've also done an internship at Eurojust. Maybe if you could compare your traineeship at the European Parliament with the internship at Eurojust. How was it different? What was similar?
Well, it was completely different. Even if there would be similar legislative matters, of course, Eurojust deals with judicial cooperation, and the work that I have done there was very narrow and navigated only into one field, and the work at the Parliament really is very broad, and some things could be quite general because my member is participating in 4 committees and 2 delegations, which means that we often help each other with the other assistants in the different committees if there is urgent work. And at Eurojust, you would only have to have a certain skill set. Also, Eurojust was maybe less busy, and even if back then I would still have a normal working day there as an intern, I would maybe start at 9:30 and leave at 6 or something, 6:30 or something. I would be way less busy than compared to the Parliament, because in the Parliament my member really would treat his trainees as assistants in a way, because he wanted to show us what it really means to be in this institution. So I would often work longer, and yes, if I want to really help and participate actively, I would do a lot more things.
Okay, well, thank you very much for our main discussion. And I'm sure students also and participants will have some more specific questions in the Q&A session. And now I will give the word back to Dave.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so Ram, right now I want to focus a bit on your work experience. So you mentioned before that you did an internship at Europa de Centraal. So maybe I'm being too specific, but can you remember your first day at the internship and your last day at the internship as well? Like, what was the process? How did it go from day 1 to the last day?
I was lucky, I think, with Europa de Centraal. It was in Dutch, first and foremost. So if there's any Dutch speakers here, definitely capitalize on it. I think they are looking for interns right now. You know, it was public sector, and I think public sector, especially in the Netherlands, is kind of infamous for being slow, and you get a very specific subset of possibilities of what you get to do, and that's it. But I was lucky because it was kind of semi-public in a way. It's a foundation funded by government that advises pretty much any type of government, from ministries to the smallest municipalities, on matters of EU law relevant to them, essentially. So I was lucky because it was public sector, and in that sense, there was a lot of work to be done, as is usually the case within any type of public sector work. While at the same time, I was also given a lot of freedom to actually really draft letters of advice to municipalities and clients. And at the same time, I was supported very well. When I didn't understand a particular question, or when I was out of my depth, which happens when you're given free reign of the place, essentially. They were very supportive in general. So my first day was pretty much, this is your place, sit down and make sure that you get acquainted with our internal systems and our files and whatever. And at the end of the week, I was drafting my first letter of advice, really. They really expected a lot. And at the same time, were respectful of my capabilities as well as the limits there too. So at the end, I mean, the idea was for them, you have a 5-month internship, and after 5 months, you should be essentially be a fully qualified employee. That was kind of their process. So what helped a lot in that regard was that they really kind of kept reminding me on, kind of your internship will for us have been a success if you are at level such and such at the end of it. And we had weekly conversations about, what do you think you need and where you want to take this. And it is one of those internships where if the situations are right, you will definitely have a chance to stay or come back later. A lot of employees there currently have at some point been interns there that just stuck around after their studies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I see that you mentioned, so the first week they required you to give a letter of advice. So my question is, do they, granted that you did the internship during your studies, do they take into account the fact that you're also a student, and let's say giving you a letter of advice to do within the first week would take more time than it normally would for a professional? And how do they measure that, and would that does that become a problem for you as a student?
Well, it was in general, it was a challenging time because I had a couple of courses to do still, and I couldn't attend classes, so I had to do some home studying in the evenings. I think the general guideline there was when a request from any type of governmental organization comes in for some advice, is to have it answered within 4 hours. Obviously, I wasn't even close to 4 hours at my first go, and I think it was more like 4 days. But I mean, of course, that this is all factored in, and they take a specific set of advice that they realize, is a slow burn and that is not in need of pressing attention. So, I mean, they definitely adjusted for what they expected I was capable to do. I think the most challenging part, which is also the single most important piece of advice I can give to anyone, is that, I've been studying law in English, and then all of a sudden you go to practicing it in Dutch. And yes, it's your native language, whatever it is, albeit Romanian or French or Spanish, Italian or Swedish, or anything really. If you have a chance, I would definitely suggest try and keep up with some of the basic materials in your own language. If you don't, I think you'll run afoul of linguistic challenges right from the get-go. I think that was easily the most challenging part for me to respond quickly and to do so in a language that's native to me, but in which you've not really considered all the jargon that comes up during 4 years of intensive law studies. At some point, what I started doing was just, take any regular directive or just a treaty itself and just try and read it in your own language. Take an hour and something will stick, and you'll know some of the words, and you'll be able to switch really quickly at some point, but definitely try and keep up with it.
Okay, and something that we discussed previous to the event. So, as far as I'm aware, Europa de Central gives advice on the government on how to implement EU law. And as far as I remember, your paper that you submitted on the ILSA journal was kind of related to that, right? So what I'm seeing a pattern. So what you're learning in an internship, you're putting in a paper. So how does that process go? Is it difficult, or?
You mean the process from my internship to my thesis, or?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I'm writing my master's thesis about a subject that I actually wanted to use for my bachelor thesis. Somebody at my internship advised me, don't, because what I'm writing it about now is a very niche area, and you only have 10,000 words, which sounds like a lot, but once you start writing, you will find that 10,000 words is nothing to write a thesis in. So I was looking for something that was very specific, and because I knew, like, throughout my essentially my legal career in The Hague, I'd had a lot of different experiences, a lot of different practical experience that I sought out, and obviously a lot of different courses. And I think the one thing that I really didn't do anything with was administrative law. So I figured maybe I can try and see if there's like any administrative issue with some EU ambit to it that I can write my master's thesis about. So we started talking about it, and it was this, which was about services directive and municipal guidelines. Wouldn't advise anyone to read it because it's very technical, and if I read it now, I think it's quite boring actually. But it was either that or nitrogen. Maybe some of you remember all the farmers with their tractors and whatever in The Hague. It was either this or that, and I chose the other. I think in selecting the subject, especially when it's EU law, it's easy. There's so many things in EU law that you can write about. There's so many things that are as of yet undiscovered, problems that come up every day, legal gaps, enforcement gaps. There's a lot to write. A general advice, if you're looking for a subject to write your thesis on, look at European law blog. I mean, they discuss a lot of issues at a very basic level. And there's probably a lot of different things on there that could serve as a perfectly well cornerstone for any type of thesis.
I see, because so far students who don't have, like, say, work experience, they find a hard time to find issues to write about, because of course they have to read a lot, they have to process a lot, but they haven't seen like what actually happens in reality. And I'm sure that once you go and you start an internship, you see that many things are, let's say, not as smooth as you would expect. So I believe that you give a very good example. You did the internship and you collected all the information and wrote a paper. So thank you for explaining all that process, and thank you for answering all the questions in these discussions. So right now, it would be good to start the Q&A session. So I invite everyone who's participating to write a question in the chat or raise their hand, preferably raise their hand. In the end of the day, this is a discussion, a conversation. So we would like to keep the format. So yes, feel free. Yes, Bianca.
My mic, sorry. I think I kind of already can imagine the answer, but I wanted to still ask how important it is to have a master when pursuing like a career in the EU law field. So either going towards more like EU institution, or more like to the private sector, since the both of you have a master and in an EU field as well.
If I may start very quickly and then maybe give the floor to Bram. In my personal opinion, it's really important. It kind of shows that you're interested in a couple of specific subjects that you navigate yourself in, and the more narrow your experience is, the more specialized you are in what you're applying for. But of course, I know that this may work for the institutions, but it might be different for, let's say, companies or other organizations. So I would say that this is for the institutions, it is important.
I think it kind of depends on what you want to do, which is a useless answer, I think. But if you consider at some point you want to become a lawyer or you want to qualify for some type of profession, I think a master's is definitely necessary. But at the same time, you can do a lot of the same work, at least in the private sector, or for local or regional types of government without that master's. But the thing is, if right now, I think up until you're 30, studying is actually, from what I understand, is a lot easier. So if you have the chance to do a master's, I would definitely suggest you do one. Even if you don't need it, at least you will prevent running into a glass ceiling at some point.
Thank you. That was very good to know, and thank you again to the both of you for being here. And all the information was quite useful, and it's always great to have insights from alumni. So thank you again.
Yes, Florian.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot. So I was wondering, I have questions for both of you actually. So Plamina, you did an Erasmus, right, in Italy, if I got that right.
Yes,
And
yes.
how did you like use it? Because I'm currently doing one in Tallinn in Estonia, and you know, like, I mean, sometimes I feel like there's like great things where I study, but like I learn less or like I learn differently because like obviously the pandemic, but like how did you use it during like for you to apply to like your master? Did you mention it particularly or did you just leave it out because like
Well, I get where you're coming from. If I have to be honest, my tutor back then, Mr. Worster, he personally advised me not to go for the Erasmus program because he was kind of conveying to us the view that you could do a lot in The Hague, a lot of traineeships, a lot of different opportunities for network, and it is of course more difficult to do it in another member state where you don't speak the language, because obviously I didn't speak Italian, but I just and of course I faced difficulties in the beginning in Rome. But what I tried to do, I started participating in the Association for Erasmus Students. I talked to people. I told them I like ILSA. They helped me to go to a Model EU. Model EU. It's like Model United Nations, but little Model EU that another Italian university was organizing a simulation. So I went there. I met the Italian people, and I just tried my best to get to meet new people and get to expand my network. I know that it is very difficult now during the pandemic, if especially you have everything from your home, but I would say try to look for some things that you're interested at, and let's see if you could meet new people from university or try to participate in some extracurricular activities. I think this could make it better for you.
And you didn't mention it in your like application specifically.
I did mention it. I did. I think it's good to mention personally because it shows that you are open to communicate with different environment, with different people. So for me, I'm Bulgarian. I went to study in the Netherlands, then in Rome, then I did summer schools where, they were not only in the Netherlands. So I did really try to put myself in different multicultural environments and show that I'm coping with them. And I think for this, it's super important to mention it, because you would not mention the fact that you were partying or you met new people, you went out. You would mention, because this is what also you do everywhere. You're a student, it's normal, you like to have fun, but you will mention the academic part of what you have done and how it developed your abilities. And if you're going for a master's degree that is not in your home country, I think it will be well received, for sure.
Thanks. And Bram, I was wondering, what was the name of your master degree, and especially the social track? Because I think you mentioned that there was like 3 tracks. No?
Yeah, I would send the link of it in the chat, but I think it's I'm actually not allowed to send chats. I'll definitely send the link of it later to Adam. Maybe he can just share it with you people, you guys. The master's program itself is called European Economic Law. I think if you Google European Economic Law, Stockholm University, it'll definitely get you there, and the site is fairly self-explanatory. The social track there is taught by Dr. Jean Pajou, who is first and foremost a very enthusiastic professor. He's actually right now talking to Mr. Lalange to have Stockholm University partake in the debate tournament in 2022, I think. And from what I understand from the colleagues that have done it, they really, really enjoyed it too. I don't really know a lot about its contents because I haven't done it, but from the people that I've talked to, they're really happy that they took it up, and I think they would definitely do so again. if you would, I could, if you would like to, I can see if I can find someone who completed the social part and provide you if they're willing to, but probably they are with contact information.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks a lot.
All right, I will do. I'll probably send it through Adam because I have Adam's email address.
Yes, of course, you can send it to me. I will pass it along. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I see. We have a question from one of our members. So basically, what skills should one emphasize when applying for an internship or a future study or job? For example, should we make sure that we mention our projects that we did at uni, as it's something that helps and makes us stand out? Pamela, you can go first, by the way.
Okay. Well, it really depends. I know this is the lawyer's favorite answer, but I mean it does depend on the organization. Of course, when I was applying for Eurojust, I would mention the different assignments that I have done and in the different fields, and I would mention specifically why I have written something in this field. I would try to show a bit that I know a bit more about the field and what I have written or researched on might help me in my future work. But of course, I think in general it's important to mention your projects and assignments, because not in all research, in the research-based universities, you don't really have much of those, from what I have heard from friends of mine. And of course, if you don't know how to write a letter to a client or a report, a brief, this makes you less attractive candidate. So I think it's really, really important. I think you should mention those, but you should be concise. This is another important point.
Thank you. Bram?
I think the general comment that I would make is that you need to have what I would call good story. It doesn't, wherever you apply, if you apply for a master's, as Flamenga said, when you apply for a master's, you want to explain to them what you have to offer to them as well. I would add to that, it also helps your story, if you will, if you can explain to them why you think this master's is going to give you what you want to get from life. I remember I put in my master's application specifically for law firms that I wanted to end up working on. And I think it's those kind of specifics that help you, or that help other people understand, you know, this person is really looking to do just exactly this, which I think is the biggest really criterion for anybody that hires anything, albeit a master's student, an intern, or someone for a position, is that they need to be convinced that you really want to do what you're applying for. You know, you really want to do the master's degree and you really want that particular internship. And I think if you're able to convince them that even if you lack some of the requirements that they have in the advert for it, if you're able to convince them that this is what you want to do and that you're able to learn on the spot and learn quickly, I think that will make you an attractive candidate. And I think you can definitely do so by stressing the diversity of the bachelor's program that you've done, and how it's given you comparative aspects. And especially if you've moved from abroad to The Hague, talk a little bit about how you were forced to settle into a new, strange international environment, because all these things, I think they speak to the undertaking nature of most of the people that I've met at the law program, which in general is something good, but which also helps to explain that you really think actively about what you want to do and you have a plan for yourself.
See, that's a very good point, because so many students come to The Hague, and now it's become common that The Hague, it's an international city, but still coming here is a challenge, especially if you come out from a country that is far away from here. So I'm sure that is really important. And I also like Plamena's point about sincerity, because of course the people who will be interviewing you are not stupid. They know and they can see why you're there. And of course, there will always be people who are better than you or have a more colorful CV than you. But if you're able to show that you're sincere and they can trust you, I believe that is like a very strong point. So yeah, thank you very much for your insight. I can ask again for if there are any more questions for the guests or for Dr. Marassi as well. Yes, Alessandra.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I had a question for Bram. And because you mentioned in the beginning somewhere that you are going to pursue a career as a lawyer, a corporate lawyer in Luxembourg, I think. And how exactly did you get to that place? Because with a bachelor's degree in international law, you're not a qualified lawyer. How difficult is it to get to that point? And how did you go about it?
Well, in part I was lucky because I happened to know someone there, which kind of opened my eyes to Luxembourg. When I say corporate lawyer, what I should probably say is corporate M&A, mergers and acquisitions. The thing is, in Luxembourg is the second biggest market in the world for investment funds, and investment funds, all they do is buy and sell stuff, right? So all in all, I figured Luxembourg is interesting. I applied with a specific firm, which the history of which resonates with me and the culture of which resonates with me. So to your question on how it works, it varies by country. I am Dutch, but to qualify as a lawyer in the Netherlands, you need to have taken an X amount of courses in Dutch law and very specific. They call it civil effect. It's, if you ask me, it's kind of ridiculous and unnecessary, but I mean, you know, of course I'd say that, which I didn't qualify by unless I do another master's. So I started looking at alternatives, and in Luxembourg, I mean, I still need to study, but I can start working at some point, start working part-time, take extra courses. Right now I'm in the process of learning French, which is very useful, seeing as how the courses are going to be in French. So it's challenging, but it's definitely possible, and it varies per country. In a lot of member states in the European Union, having a master's degree is the most important thing for qualifying as a lawyer. In Germany, you need to take state exams. In Belgium and the Netherlands, you need to have a master's degree in respectively Belgian and Dutch law. I think in the United Kingdom, even though it's not technically the European Union, having a master's degree qualifies you for having a training contract. There's a lot of different opportunities. It varies per country, but once you are registered as an attorney in any European country, you can practice in other European countries on a temporary basis under one title. In fact, at some point, if you've practiced for long enough in another country, you can assume that country's title as well. It's so kind of tricky. It's an old directive, but for me, it was interesting to, essentially for me, it was very interesting to not do another master's after this, because after some time, studying loses its appeal when you want to start working. So that's kind of how I came up with it. And Luxembourg in itself seems like an interesting country to me. I've never really been one to live out my entire life in the Netherlands. And I chose the particular firm because they rely heavily on kind of inter-office mobility, meaning it's easier to also work in other offices that they have spread across the world.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful.
Yeah, I didn't say anything because I wanted to just leave you the floor, but thanks again for being here, Plamena and Bram, and also thanks ILSA, Dave, and Bianca for agreeing to co-host this event. It's important for us, and thank you.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.
That was good.
Yes, no, we were always happy to do anything that it's like this. We're always happy to to promote our program in every possible way.
Yeah, I think from our side, we really want to see what, we really want to show students what they can do with following this area of law, especially because it's always a bit struggling, it's a bit of a struggle to convince students that there are a lot of job possibilities, even without having, as Bram said, a civil effect or being a qualified lawyer. I mean, Plamena, I don't think you're a qualified lawyer. And in
Not
Brussels,
yet.
it's not that you can easily have a number of very interesting jobs without being a qualified lawyer. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you as well for the organization, and it was very interesting, and for all the questions and all the work and preparation. And if you'd like to add me on LinkedIn or exchange further questions or cooperation or anything, I'm available to help. So yes, thanks again, and let's keep in touch with all of you. And good luck. And good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also,
Thank you very much.
before I let everyone, before we officially conclude, something that we forgot to mention and ask from the beginning, for your permission to have the recording of today's session also on our YouTube channel, so students that could not be here can always go back to the information. If it's
I'm
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Perfect.
Fine.
Thank you.
It's okay. It's
It's fine.
okay. It's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for attending, and it was a pleasure to meet you. I hope at some point we get to see each other face to face, but until then, yeah, let's be hopeful. And thank you very much for your time. I know that you guys right now might be very busy and you have important things to do, but yeah, we really appreciate this as students. We really want to have some examples of what happens in practice. So thank you very much again. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. And of course, it would be great to exchange contacts with you and keep in contact, of course. So yeah, thank you everyone, and of course, special thanks goes to the U department for providing the contacts, and of course, always a special thanks to the ILSA board for helping us and never letting us down. So yeah, otherwise, it was great to see you, and I wish you a pleasant evening.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Likewise.
Bye bye.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Have a good evening.